And welcome back for the second half here, Mini Ice Age Conversations, brought to you on TV every other Friday, 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, uncensored. Let's talk about the changes in our food price driven by, well, ocean surface temperatures. Now, I wanted to start here because record water anomalies in areas where they don't have buoys really surprises me in a lot of these areas. So the story goes like this. 2005 on the left, Katrina formed in this same band. Well, every year these hurricanes form in the same band. You could say Andrew formed. Okay, whatever. But the record water temperatures, look at the brick red over there, main development region. They're trying to tell you that this year the water temperatures are so outrageously hot that it's going to develop a lot more hurricanes. Now I'm wondering about the underwater volcanoes on the ridges there. Is anybody measuring that for one of the reasons that the water temperatures are increasing? I mean, there's a huge amount of volcanism across the planet. Like these volcanoes are just turning on left, right, and center as we get into more electromagnetic changes on our planet here. That development region, I'd like to get a volcanic map for underwater and then take a look and overlay those two. They're predicting 22, 23 hurricanes, all based on this. Insurers are at the cusp of not insuring homes in Florida anymore. And if this is going to be a devastating year for hurricanes, they're going to watch homeowners insurance be not available in Florida. Now, when that happens, it comes, what happens? Truly, is the American populace going to be kicked out of their homes across hundreds of thousands, if not a million homes across Florida? You can't pay your mortgage unless you have your homeowner's insurance. Well, the homeowner's insurance, it's not available anymore. Like in California, there's areas they won't insure fire damage. So those homes that had previously fire insurance, if they don't have it, their mortgage is pulled. Same thing with this. Enough, one or two more devastating storms coming through Florida and they're going to pull insurance. So what happens to all those people who are saying, all right, you don't have insurance, so you got to vacate your home. Well, then who buys all those millions of homes? Another thing that's going to bend and twist the weather is just rapid, and I mean incredibly fast. So if we go back, since 1950 and look at instances of El Nino flipping into La Nina, this will be in the top 3 of the most rapid shift with a rapid variance in temperatures. That inversion of temperatures so almost instantaneously is going to have an effect cavitating our systems here of precipitation, clouds. So La Nina is forecast almost unanimously to be fully in place by October, November, December of this year. So we're going to go from hot ocean in the Pacific to instant cooling pretty much in Pacific in under 6 months. And what will this do? Well, that's a well-known weather pattern. People bet on this all the time. The commodities traders across most agriculture bands in the world either look at the Indian dipole or this here, El Nino, to see what it will do with crops and rice and corn and whatever other commodities are out there. And this is how a lot of people make money on the futures market. This is a well-known cycle. It's been like this since the 1800s. Not new at all. But as we can see, we came sort of mid-range into the strongest El Ninos since 1950. So if we were going to put this just in the last 10 years, this would be in the top, scraping 1 or 2. But as we see here, so going back to 1950, we got, 84 years of record here. So these are the top. And where does that take us? Okay, we could follow the purple line. We're going to head down. So remember the previous chart here, almost everything indicates November, December, October, somewhere in that range. So I decided to put right in October, and that's the trajectory we need to take to get down there. And as you can see, that drop-off will leave us in the top 3.
Marjorie has taught millions of people how to grow an abundance of food in a grid-down situation, even if you have no experience, are older, or out of shape.
I've spent decades finding the fastest, easiest, and funnest ways for the average person to be able to grow a lot of food. I've created a step-by-step process that's so simple that even kids to elders have been using it in order to grow a lot of their own food. And you can too, even if you have no experience, you're older, or you're out of shape.
Marjorie's free webinar provides you with the tools and knowledge that you need to thrive during these difficult times. You'll learn Marjorie's 3-part system for quickly producing vegetables, eggs, meat, and much more. Go to homegrown2030.com. That's homegrown2030.com, or click on that link in the description box below. And now on with the video. The steepness of it. not that bounce. So obviously those two that are below it, you can see the steepness in the drop also. That'll put us, and then you start to look back at these anomalies that would occur. And now we got the heated ocean in the Atlantic. We got the steep drop off here into La Nina, and the Indian dipole doing the same thing, getting really cold really fast. So we got two cool oscillators in Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean, and one heat indicator in the Atlantic. So just even on that same latitude going around, you can just guess that there's going to be tumultuous mix-ups. Now once the Atlantic turns cool, the Pacific's cool, and the Indian Ocean's cool, then we're going to have a significant different problem to deal with as well, with more rainfall. But grain stats, speaking of wetness, Iowa, too wet to plant. Now this is if you go across Twitter or any of the feeds, you can watch these farmers talk about they just can't get in. They're 2 weeks behind optimum plant date, which means that knee-high by 4th of July, that's not a possibility for them. Each day that moves forward, they're talking about declines in yield. Now, is it for every state? No. Predominantly Midwest. Well, that's predominantly where a lot of the corn is grown also. Depends what happens from this point if it stays wet, if they're going to get it in the ground. But here's another anecdote to that. The USDA does not adjust corn yield estimates usually early in the growth cycle like it is now. They're just finished up with planting. There's some emergence happening, and they really don't downgrade anything normally unless it's noticeably going to dent yields that they can't even hide it. Then they do it. But we're looking at 2 out of the last 14 years. And this year also is another one where they're downgrading yields already. So you can look at prices are going to continue up with our base commodities. So if we're looking at corn sentiment, like once that information came out last month, later in last month in April, you could see where it started, what was at around 436, and then it jumped up to 476. That's a huge move for corn. And we have our possibility as those who trade continuing back up and above that price later on. And if we look at wheat, it just speaks for itself. The same thing with the plantings, and when the information got released last month, late last month in April, and it just took off from there. So the people who plant these grains, trade these grains, understand that there's something wrong with the planting season this year, and it's starting to run away on the pricing. In addition to everything else that's going up in your price. This is a guaranteed move upward for food prices. Now, soybeans followed the same trajectory. It pulled back a little bit. But right in that same time, what was it, right around like the 15th, 20th, 23rd, somewhere there, this came out with the forecast, and look at everything has gone up since that time. Now, there was also downgrades in Brazil due to their guessing of what the yields would have been during the drought, then subsequently followed by those record floods in southern Brazil. And this one covers ground beef, boneless chicken breast, the chicken whole. You can see where the prices are heading. And I want you to look at the black line there. Ground beef just continues upward. Now, it did pull off. That purple line is interesting, too. That's the United Nations FAO, World Food Price Index. It came back down out of necessity. Same thing's happening here. Somehow Walmart is suddenly lowering all their prices for food in the store. Imagine that. Target is too. So what's happening with all these stores being pressured to lower food prices as we come in through the end of the year here? All in unison, all at the same time, all dropping their prices just for food. You don't want angry people squibbling about food prices now, do you? But as soon as the end of the year and the harvests come in, you're going to watch things run like you have never seen them run. This is what I'm saying. When it gets to that point, there's going to be a need for military around our food installations. If they're going to steal copper already this early in the game, what are they going to do for food? Now, speaking of food, and we thought we could have our own gardens and grow. And this is over in the UK, the Welsh, or Wales for those of you. Welsh Labour is now using satellites, like commercially available satellites, to spy on people's gardens. So Google Earth would be an example. It's publicly available software. Welsh government, along with the Valuation Office as a tax agency equivalent, are spying on homeowners with bigger gardens in lower crime rate areas. So those people who live out in the countryside got big enough gardens to supply themselves plus others trade. But now, why do they need to be cataloged and databased? That's the question. Well, if you look at Oregon, they were going to start requiring anybody with half an acre garden or larger to abide by runoff laws and water contamination laws next year. You know, they were trying to say if you had 3 animals or more and they were on like a gravel pad, you had to register as a contained feedlot because of water contamination issues. You got 3 cows on, 20 acres and they're worried about 3 cows peeing in a field somewhere. Well, they were going to do the very same thing with gardens this next round in 2025 until too many people started talking about it and they took it off the books now. But this is the same thing. Why are they so worried about bigger gardens? They're afraid of you being able to trade outside the system. Or they want to know where the food is when they want to come confiscate it. One of the two. Scary times. But speaking of inflation, Lebanese inflation falls below Turkey's inflation. What? Because, both these countries have been just runaway, outrageous inflation. Lebanon, a story in itself. I watch a couple food shows that are over there, travel around, and, they were saying about if they had kept silver, they would have been able to keep up with the inflation. But, just read some stories about this. If this were to happen in the United States, either Turkish inflation or Lebanese inflation, our country would split at the seams. There'd be no way for people to survive. I mean, I'm just shocked at how people get through some of these currency devaluations or / hyperinflation events. So Lebanese inflation finally falls. It's right around 60% now. And that's per month. So imagine us, 60% per month. Americans wouldn't stand for that. There would be political change already. So let's talk about Indian silver imports. Remember, nations are going to try to protect themselves with metals against the debasement of U.S. dollars. So remember that slide I showed you in the first half of the sanctions being put on possibly from the U.S. against India for helping Iran develop a port. Is it really, or is it because India is importing so much silver? At the same time, they're being smacked on the wrist. How dare you? It's not gold. It's not central bank gold buying, but it's silver. And if we're looking at, what's that in, millions. So 1,000 million, $1.7 billion worth of silver just this last month. Record highest. Are they being punished for trying to get away from the dollar and build up their reserves for this new unit currency that's being formulated in the BRICS nations? And another thing about Shanghai Gold Exchange, Shanghai Metals Exchange, Bourse, always routinely trading above U.S. or COMEX or London Bullion Metals Exchange pricing. So if we look at $36.71 per ounce, we didn't reach that here in our trading. We reached 32 and touched barely just below 33. So that means that's a $3 difference at least, almost $4 premium in China. And everywhere you look, every day, every time, this is another pull here, Shanghai silver versus COMEX silver, you're looking at about $3 higher on the price per ounce. They're trying to siphon in and pull all the silver into the country. But you can see there's more discovery in these other nations and people are willing to pay more for it because it's that value for the transition into all this machinery and monetary metals that are going to be the base of the new world. People are willing to pay more fictitious paper to get the real thing in the hand, the real commodity in hand. So central banks, substantial gold purchases. Yeah, they're still doing it. Why now? Look at all the previous years. Go back to 2010. You thought after the financial crisis they would have loaded up, back up the truck, but nope. We waited until now. And what do you see about the prior years, 2022, 23, and now 24, is equal or surpassing last year in 2023. Metals are going to move where the new currency, the new wealth and opulence, the new world that we enjoyed in the 1960s here in America is moving over to non-Western aligned nations. Let's talk about base metals here for the last couple minutes. Silver up, gold up. They all hit records. I mean, the silver again, we're talking about outside the U.S. pricing, but if we're talking about inside the United States with our dollar pricing here, it did not reach a record. But outside, since there's been a lot of devaluation, it reached records across the planet in many, many places. Now, gold, even here, in our own priced U.S. dollars, reached records. So it smashed records everywhere else where, they're using non-dollar denominated spot pricing on that. So here's an interesting one. Like when gold breaks out, and this is the future forecast for an enormous amount of people, the gold breakout, they can not financial advice. It's just the way they're looking at historical cycles when it breaks out. If we go back to the 70s, 1973, far left, after it broke out of that range, it rose 350%. And then right at 1980 or so, Volcker time, boom, that jumped back out 350% approximately. Each time it breaks that range, it does the pretty much same numerical fractal that comes out. So what was that? In 2010 or so, right at Great Financial Crisis, it jumped up again. Remember, record price, and that's when silver went to 45. And here we are. It's breaking out again of the range. So if it follows the same trajectory as the last 3 times it broke out, it's going to take us to around $8,600 for gold. Based on historical patterns, you notice they're not using anything could be, something in the 1600s of, one Ottoman Empire battling something, nothing like that. Possibility. Now, if it goes to 8,600 and we're still at an 80-to-1 gold ratio, you're going to be minimum $162. Now, that's with the current gold to silver ratio. If it decreases, that means silver is going to blow past this tremendously. So they're just using the past to forecast for the future on the breakouts. $162 silver, would that rock the planet? Yes, it would. That would mean everything would be 5 times more expensive. If gold goes to 8,600, our currency would be debased by that much. The inflation would follow that much. Are you prepared for things to cost 5 times more? That same 1 ounce round of silver, let's say gasoline is $5 a gallon, that 1 round of silver, if it goes to 162, should still buy you the same amount of gallons of gasoline with a 1 ounce round compared to the paper money beside it. So that's why people are stacking it up. And the medium range price target, as all of this is happening, $370 silver, possibly higher. Just, follow the curve up there. Because we're in the midst of a reset. We absolutely are. And, I'll bring you over here to the 1900s, Teotihuacan. Now, how long did it take for that pyramidal complex to be covered with that much vegetation, completely 100% encapsulated, farm fields, nobody tried to excavate it? That would have been several hundred years in itself. They say the Mayan era collapsed circa 800 to 1000 AD or so because of drought. Okay, it took us 122 years to excavate it and get it to where it looks pretty now. What was the reset cause? So you're telling me Teotihuacan from below, massive empire, and then suddenly they just disappeared in a flash, gone. So we are repeating some of these cycles. I do believe we're back at the same point. A lot of people know this that have older knowledge and access to Mayan codices, etc. Different things found across the planet over the last 500 years. So you have to ask yourself, why is all this change happening right this second? That's the thing. The inbound cycle for change naturally was known. So society is going to have to deal with these natural changes and flow with it. Now, I think we're being led through this change so those in power can remain in power and control the financial system after this reset. And I'm not talking about the Great Reset, Klaus Schwab. That's us getting drawn through the natural reset at the exact parallel time. Somebody knows about this, and we ended up here in the apocalypse and having to go to work. We're somewhere in this Venn diagram right here. I can feel it. You can feel it. Everybody knows what I mean. The world's ending on this side, but you still need to keep going. Now, the last thing here, I want to bring Pakistan because of resets in different time frames. This would be, 30,000 years ago or so. It made me think just for a second. The Princess of Hope in Pakistan looks very similar to Egypt in the Sphinx. Now, if the Sphinx were 30,000 years old on this plateau here, would it be eroded as such? Maybe it's 80,000 years. Well, I'm not sure. I'm just throwing it out there, trying to bring us up. And is this a statue melted? Could be. Is it a natural formation? Pretty interesting. You can see the arms, the head, and the breastplate there with the flowing dress. Just saying, because the more ancient, the more goddess worship at that time, for a better term, you come back to Inanna and further back in the myths and legends, takes us to it. So where do we sit? How much change do you think is truly happening? And is it all organic? That's the thing. And if it's not, then we should be able to prepare ourselves with a little bit of simple preparation. The transition, it's all going non-denominated, non-Western countries are where the wealth is moving to. Do you have a plan? What happens if you stay here in the Western nations? Do you have a plan to survive this? Either way, you're going to need a plan B, C, D, E, F, and G, because it's going to be changing that fast in real time that you're going to have to adjust your life in real time that fast. Thanks for watching. Hope you got something out of it today. Bright to you on TV, David Dubine signing off. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.